Good afternoon from the lighthouse. I am weary this evening. I've just listened to a good portion of the speech given by the United States Department or Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and the so called United States President. The first thing I saw here, just the contradictions in what was said, was alarming. Many parts of the speech were alarming, and I'm just going to start with some of the things that stood out to me. Um, Hesketh, he stated that something to the effect of that we don't want people to just be the first in the military, um, that we don't want a woke agenda in the military, or he in his administration does not want a woke administration. They want people to be the best, not the first. That struck me as hypocritical considering that the so called president is the first convicted felon and insurrectionist to be president of this country, and he is not the best this country has to offer by far. Hesketh lectured the military heads. He used vulgarities. He was disrespectful. He spoke of them as if he were, what it reminded me of was the Hitler Youth, that we want to make these soldiers look very uniform, very standard, very young, very fit. Like he wants to make an ideal soldier specimen. Um, I thought that was hypocritical. I mean, I've seen, I've lived near bases, I've seen the military personnel. It is diverse. The military is full of people from every background. So um, I don't understand. He wants to purge all of those people simply because they don't meet his standard of. I don't even understand what he's saying. Some number that they have that they're going to be sending to the generals. All of this information really could have been shared, and I'm supposing the military has some kind of guide about qualifications. It is unclear to me why this would have to be said in person on national, no, on international television. Mr. Hesketh went on to talk about toxic leadership, um, and that was hypocritical to me. We're dealing with the so-called president who is shielding information about his involvement with a known child sex trafficker. That's his boss, the man, and that's toxic in itself. And then on the same day, or it might have been yesterday, the so called president put out a social media post mocking an ethnic group. If you find his Truth Social post about Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, he was mocking an ethnic group, and he was using AI to simulate vulgarities out of the mouth of Chuck Schumer. A man of that office, of that position, really should not have time. And I don't understand why you would give yourself to that kind of amusement or publicity as a supposed leader of the known world. Um, Hesketh mentioned bullying, bringing bullying and hazing back to the military. I was very confused why he thought any parent or would be soldier is would be drawn to being bullied or hazed. Why is that necessary? My understanding was you're trying to bring them together to make them work as a team, leave no person behind. Why are we hazing soldiers? I mean, even in college settings, that too often leads to death. Why would we risk a soldier's life to meet your standards of, I don't know, college juvenile behavior? That seemed odd to me. Um, he mentioned that the military needs to be ruthless. And he also said that the U.S. military serves at the pleasure of the president. I don't know that to be true. I thought they were to protect the Constitution, to honor their oath to the Constitution, not to any one man, um, particularly not someone um, who is a user, who will honor and praise a segment of the population, but if they get in the way of what he wants to do, he will leave them out to dry. Um, just a second. So I am continuing. I listened a bit further into the remarks of the so called president, and some things that stood out to me. He spoke of an invasion from within and expressed that was, I guess, his administration's nervousness. And I thought that was hypocritical considering the activities of January 6th. He spoke of offering a 3% raise, which isn't really a lot. I mean, it's just a normal raise in good times. We don't see that now, but that would just be a regular raise. I mean, it barely beats inflation, probably doesn't beat inflation. If you offer someone an investment at 3%, they would, in this current climate, they're like, that's so nothing. I mean, even house loans, 6%, but he wants to give a 3% raise to the military. Um, no mention of mental health care, no mention of will be what the provisions will be, because a lot of these veterans are finding themselves on the street, which he criminalizes. But moving on, he moved on and he jumps around, so I'm jumping around. The positive effect, he says, of troops or the National Guard being in Washington, D.C., and how he considered that to be a precedent. He seemed to be declaring war on the American people. He spoke often of military capabilities, not as though he were talking to the people in front of them who should know those capabilities, but as if he were speaking to the world at large. I just don't understand why he would openly state the US's military capabilities and developments like this golden shield on this type of forum. I mean, it would seem that should be insider information, even if it's in the beginning stages or that's very vague. It still gives other countries an idea of our defenses. I didn't understand the point of doing that. Um, he talks about being in Washington, D.C., decreasing the crime there, but there was no mention that in the last 2 weeks, Utah, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have been the site of mass shootings and a bombing, essentially a bombing, firebombing of a Mormon church. But no mention of that, no mention of all of the Americans who've lost their lives in those incidents, and no mention of any resources uh, to basically address the problems that are leading to these kinds of mass shootings. He for this so-called president, he made a big deal about criminals entering the country. I don't think anybody is for criminality, domestic or foreign, coming in. Crimes are, we're trying to prevent them. That's what we have an active police force for. But his harping on criminal coming into the country just seemed hypocritical to me, when the high command of our country, the leader, is a convicted felon and he's in high office. He travels around the world allegedly bribing other world leaders. He he sent a mob to attack his own vice president. He suggests here of turning the US military on American citizens, and that would be unthinkable for any patriot. But this so-called president thinks it's a good idea. Hesketh says he wants to make this military into killers, and then you want to turn them on the US population. I am I don't understand why people are taking this lightly. The speech became tiresome and I blanked out for a while, but I really did want to hear for myself what this gathering was about. So I tuned myself back in, and it was a litany of attacks on people and cities who are not making national policy or who are protesting inadequate policies of this administration, to make to deal with things such as inflation, job losses, lack of healthcare accessibility, lack of national improvement or progress, lack of affordable housing, mass shootings, and so on. He was advocating for violence against protesters. Now, I can agree. We don't need to, and we don't want to encourage people to spit on anyone. That's not civil. I mean, we do need to do the action of protesting in a civil manner, but neither do we need the so called leader of the nation provoking first responders to hit and harm American citizens. It's just, that should be a given. And then he goes on to talk about protecting U.S. citizens from immigrants who are coming in, raping and shooting people. And I just thought, why does he open himself up to this? This individual, he just lost a defamation suit to the tune of $83 million for sexual assault against E. Jean Carroll. He is currently under grave suspicion of child sexual assault. He sent a mob after his own vice president. He stood on national television and said he could shoot somebody and wouldn't lose any voters. These activities are not those of a law abiding, conscientious, patriotic, good, neighborly citizen. I don't see that in him. Further, he says that the whole world is watching. And he goes on some more to disparage his own citizens, to disparage his political opponents, to call them stupid, to call them everything but colleagues in making a better country. And at the same time, he praises Saudi Arabia and I forgot the other country that he praised, while disparaging his own citizens and calling them and saying that his own citizens, maybe they're born bad. Oh, and I think earlier, I don't even recall if I mentioned it. He spoke of animals. He called some group of people in some place animals who were shooting at firemen. I'm really gonna have to do some research because I don't know of a case where anyone has said that anyone's shooting at firemen. I mean, that's just not a thing. Any people escaping a fire, who's shooting at those people, except for the mass shooter who shot people running from a building he just set on fire. Now that did actually happen, but he didn't speak about that. And finally, he wrapped this up by talking about the legacy that he wants to leave of having the strongest military. And that seems to be all that he is concerned with, besides enriching billionaires and muffling the citizenry of the United States of America. I do not understand, after watching and listening as much as I could. I think I've stopped about 3 minutes before his speech ended because I literally cannot take anymore. Um, but I just, I it's not for me to understand. Those who are in agreement with him, I just don't have any place of agreement with that. I don't think people are born bad. I don't think people who don't want to run others people's lives are bad because they want to live and let live. I think that principles in our founding documents. It doesn't say everyone's going to have the very same idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't understand how a man with a beam and attached to that beam, like 17 other beams, comes out and tries to point out fault in unnamed people who is using almost like an amalgamation of things he's heard to disparage whole groups of people, when in one person, in himself, lies every crime, every lack of character that he accuses others of. I was, I am very concerned. But I will admit, he's got the power right now. I don't have the power, and it looks like Congress won't wield the power, and the Supreme Court won't wield their power, and I don't know who will. I do know it won't last always. This, whatever he's doing and whatever he's got planned, it will end. It will stop. But he's put his people, or well, not his people. He doesn't even like us, actually. Um, he's put the world in a non-progressive place. I am speechless at this point. I guess this was what you would call dismay. But I know this will not last. This too will end. It will pass. But I just came on here to the best of my understanding, and I mean, this is after my full work day. I haven't done any additional research. This is just listening to what they're saying point by point, and as a civilian, as a just citizen of the United States who happens to care about my country and her citizens, this is my first impression. And I just don't understand how, as a nation, we're allowing people of this low moral character, of this incompetence, to talk down to us. It is happening, and I hope it will end soon. I hope we will use the mechanisms to rightfully move to a better place for this country, for its citizens, to make progress, not just in being ruthless and killing people and threatening people and bullying your citizens and threatening your citizens, but actually doing something progressive. Our parks are down. You can't even keep a national park open. What are you going to do with this military force? You going to go scare the world into what? You can't run this, something as simple as a national park. In 8 months, you run the national park system into the ground. I mean, just the level of incompetence and criminality. You talked about, the leadership. If this is our leadership, what I mean, the leadership is sunken. We need not follow their example. We have to be better than them as a nation. Most of us already are better than them. And we have to continue to be, to save ourselves and to be decent in the doing of that. There's no reason for us to be at war with each other as a nation. This nation's already stagnated. For what cause would we go to war? For what victory would come from that, from us fighting each other? Let's not do that. Let's go back to first principles. And yeah, the forefathers, they got it wrong. They were hypocrites. They were. They were absolute hypocrites. But the words still have meaning. Why don't we carry it out without the hypocrisy, without the double handedness, without the double standard? Why don't we be, or why don't we become better than what we are today? Truly involved in our communities, truly involved in our politics, removing this big money from politics, overturning what I forgot the name of the case law, but overturning that law that's making it possible to have these donations influence our politicians the way that they are, reclaiming a sense of civic obligation. We should be better than the people of the 1600s, 1700s, and 1800s. We're supposed to make progress, not go backwards. And that's all this administration offers. Death and destruction. Not we. They did that in the World War II. That was not delightful. It was not good. All of that death and destruction. And every war since, death and destruction, that's not the way to go. That's not the way to build anything. You build in peace. I'm going to end there. I do want to just say at the end of this that um, some of my influencers, the late Neely Fuller Jr., Please listen to podcasts of his Produce Justice. You can find it on YouTube. You can also find it on the Produce Justice website. And I do want to say rest in peace to Joanne Byron Asada. I'm sorry, Asada Olugbala Shakur, who recently passed on September 25th. I do apologize if I am not pronouncing her name 100% correct, but I do want to honor those who were light in the world, who who are giving something to make the world better, a way of thinking to make the world better, to be better to each other as human beings. That is all from the Lighthouse. I wish you a good evening. Take care and goodbye.